Lori.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Lori Weeks, and I am basically the volunteer coordinator at Oakland Literacy Council. The council is a 501c3 nonprofit located in Oakland County, which is just north of Detroit. And we have been around since 1984, providing free one-on-one tutoring services for both adult basic education students as well as English language learners. And most recently, we have added math and digital literacy to the services that we offer. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now so that you can see a PowerPoint presentation. Does everybody see my overview slide?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So today I'm going to talk about a challenge Oakland Literacy Council faced servicing our adult basic education reading students, and the solution that we adopted a year ago, which was the Barton Reading System. I'm going to share some thoughts, not only for myself, but from some of our tutors and students about the program, share some of the research that's been done on it, and demo it for you so that you can see what it's like in case you are facing a similar challenge that we had faced. Maybe this is a solution that would work for you. I will want to say that this is going to be a very high level presentation. I am not a reading specialist. If there is somebody on this call who is, I welcome your thoughts and comments as we go along here. If you can add to some of the points that I'm going to be making. And as Whitney said, I'm on Zoom. So if you wanted to ask a question, we're going to open up for questions at the end of my presentation. Please use the Zoom function so we can see them. Okay, so some background. Oakland Literacy Council served ABE readers, and generally what we found is that they fell into sort of two extremes. At one extreme, we had these readers who came in at basically a solid middle school reading level. These were folks who maybe left high school before they got that diploma, or they might have gotten a diploma, but they went to a disadvantaged school district so that their reading skills weren't quite ready for college. And so they had a foundation in being able to decode words, sound out words, but they probably needed help with their comprehension and doing some of those more critical thinking skills around inferencing and analyzing, synthesizing that we want our students to do before they take that GED test. And to serve those students, we were using materials from New Readers Press, like the Challenger series or the Journey to Success series. And generally, we thought we were serving that population fairly well. At the other extreme, though, we had this group of learners who would come in and their placement test would show them to be at like a kindergarten, first grade level. Some of them didn't even know the alphabet, really, really struggling readers. And what we were finding is that we were not servicing them very well. They were struggling to make progress. And what was happening is that the tutors who worked with these students would get frustrated, and the students themselves felt really bad that they weren't able to make progress and sort of feeling like, you know, this is a poor reflection on me. And very often they would leave the program. So we started to look at that group a little bit more closely. And what we found is that there often was a pattern of them not making progress on the CASAS test that we give our students when they come into the program, and then after a year of instruction. And sometimes this would happen for 1, 2, or 3 years. And as we talked to them and looked at their intake records, what we found is that a significant portion of them had reported a history of being labeled as special education, or that they may have been told they had a reading disability, or they suspected they had a reading disability. That is not to say that they came to us with any documentation. We have one student that we actually have a documented report about what her disability is. The rest is sort of this vague, we're not sure what's wrong with this person. But we're talking about students who are really at those two lowest levels on the CASAS exam, beginning literacy, very limited ability to read or write, or beginning basic skills, where they have some but very limited skills. So as we started to do some research, what we found is that by far the most common reason people struggle to read is dyslexia. It is a neurologically based reading disability that makes it extremely difficult for someone of average intelligence to read, write, or spell. And it's estimated that 1 out of 5 people have dyslexia. And I'm going to share with you some of the common warning signs of dyslexia in adults. They're often slow readers. They may have to reread a page 2 or 3 times to understand what it says. They're usually terrible spellers. They may struggle to put their thoughts down on paper. They may have some trouble with reversals, particularly with the letters B and D when they're tired. That's not to say if you have one of those warning signs, you are dyslexic. That's not at all the case. But what we found in talking to our students is that several of them had more than one, multiple of these warning signs. And they were telling us that there were other people in their family that also had struggled to read. So that's not to say that everyone in our program who is at that low level has signs of dyslexia. We do have a couple of students who just had no formal education, and that explains why they're low-level readers. But we did feel like dyslexia or some other reading disability is probably behind the struggles some of these folks had. So we spent some time looking at what we could offer our tutors to use with these students so that they would make some progress and feel good about the work that they were doing. And our first criteria was to find something that would be multisensory, because research has shown that dyslexics learn best when they can use all of their senses for learning, not just visual, but also a lot of auditory work and tactile work. We also wanted something that was very phonics-based and very systematic in the way it taught phonics, leaving nothing to be assumed. And we wanted something that used explicit instruction, which has been shown by research to work very well with learners who have disabilities. And you probably know explicit instruction by that phrase, I do, we do, you do. That's where the teacher will model an approach to a problem, then and often think aloud while she's doing that. And then the we do is working together to do a similar problem with the student, and with lots of reinforcements and prompts. And then ultimately the student should be able to do that same kind of exercise on their own. So we also wanted something that was easy for our volunteer tutors to use, because the vast majority of them are not educators. They're retired people from all walks of life or busy working professionals who had limited time to learn a new curriculum. And we wanted something that didn't appear childish, because we are working with adults, even though we're teaching them skills that were kindergarten based. We didn't want it to look like a kindergarten tool. And because we were looking at making this decision in the early days of the pandemic, we wanted to see if we could find something that could be done for not only in-person tutoring, but remote learning as well. So we've looked at several different programs, and the one we decided to invest in was the Barton Reading System. It was developed by a woman named Susan Barton. She originally designed it for an adult literacy program, and more than 20 years ago, and she based it on the Orton-Gillingham method, which you may be familiar with. I see Whitney giving a thumbs up. It has been, proven to be an effective method to teach reading and spelling to dyslexics. The Barton system does not require a teaching background. Susan Barton designed it for volunteer tutors to use at a literacy center. It's mostly used by parents who want to tutor their children or homeschool parents. It is used in some school districts though, too. It is designed to be done on a one-on-one basis, although it can be done in small groups. And it's a very systematic approach. Each lesson builds on the one before it. There's a lot of review of previous lessons included. Susan Barton herself will model how to teach every single lesson. She has videos that are available on DVDs or available to watch online, showing how to teach the lesson. So our tutors will often kind of train themselves by just watching these videos before they go and deliver a lesson. And the lessons themselves are scripted out to tell a tutor exactly what to say and do. And there's lots of tips for correcting common errors or extending a lesson if a student needs extra practice. The lessons come with these wooden tiles that have letters on them that the students manipulate. So they're using their tactile senses as they're working on building words. And it is available electronically. So Barton actually comes in 10 different levels. Which goes all the way up to Latin and Greek root words. We invested in the first 8 levels because they correspond with kind of our program. Once students reach the certain scores that are 9th grade level or higher in the CASAS exam, they graduate from our program. So we picked levels that align with this. And you can see by level 1 phonemic awareness that Barton goes back to the very, very beginning to create a solid foundation for reading with no holes in it. It really teaches the logic behind our language by presenting one rule at a time until the student knows it. And it continues to weave those previously taught rules into subsequent lessons for review. There's always a spelling lesson that complements a phonics lesson. Barton recommends that students start at level 1, which is phonemic awareness. And that is where we begin most of our students. There have been a couple cases where we feel the student already has a solid phonemic awareness background and we'll start them on level 2. But it doesn't hurt to go back and start at a lower level, because what we have found is that a lot of our students have gaps. There are things that they just didn't learn about decoding, and when they get taught that rule, it's a real eye-opening experience for them. So we bought a site license. We used WIOA funds. A site license allows us to use the materials with an unlimited number of volunteers and tutors. It gives us master copies of the lessons, so we put together our own binders, so we don't have to worry about materials coming out and going out and never coming back. And for the online platform, for those tutors who wanted to work remotely, we use the wizimo.com platform to access all of the Barton materials. And we've been able to find grantors who, like United Way, who will cover this license so that students are able to meet with their tutors. I think I skipped a slide. So let me just go back a second, because I wanted to talk about research. There hasn't been any research done on the efficacy of Barton with adult literacy students, but there have been about 15 independent scientific studies that have shown the effectiveness of the program with school children, and that was important to us, that there had been some research done. This screenshot is from a report from a program in Jacksonville, Florida, that piloted the system with 3rd through 5th graders. all of whom had significant reading disabilities. The students were taught in small groups, 1 hour a day for 3 months. And after those 3 months, they had shown a gain in their reading levels of 1 year, 1 month. So just in 3 months, they made a year's gain. And the other research, which Barton publishes on its website, shows similar results. Okay, so I wanted to share a video with one of our tutors, Kim Wiggins, and her student, Cornelius, who've been using Barton for about a year, just about how they feel it's beneficial.
Spelling was a little bit more of a challenge because he didn't have the phonics training, and oh my gosh, his spelling has got, progressed so well, and we're really excited and we're really proud of all of the, he writes sentences often without even hesitating, and it's really exciting. That's been a big point, and I think that the Barton system has been really great because it's structured in a way, as Cornelius says, it makes sense. It also reinforces through using the tiles, and then you handwrite, then you also read. We put together phrases to make sentences, which is a really fun and interesting lesson for Cornelius, I think, and it helps understand how sentences are put together. There's so much to the program that makes sense and really, I think, helps the learning process go quite smoothly. I think it's a very good system to teach phonics, spelling, reading, also to know about sentence structure. There's so much to it that we've really, we can't say enough about it, really.
My goal is to finally get take care of this problem that I've been dealing with most of my life, and finally fulfilling my my educational needs, and being able to be able to know the full way of how you need to be learned. And also, I do see college in my future, so after that, finding that dream job, that's where my goals lie.
Okay, and Cornelius is somebody who has shown progress as a result of using Barton for a year. I think his reading level went up 2 levels. So I saw that Anne had asked a question in the chat about how many lessons are in each level of Barton, and that the first level has a smaller number. I think it's 5 or 6 lessons. Most of them have 10 or 11. And there is multiple steps to the lesson with lots of suggested add-on extra activities that you can do. So Barton recommends that students pass a screening before you put them into the system. And the screening is provided by Barton. We do it in our office. It takes 15 to 20 minutes to do. And it's basically checking to see if a student can count words in a sentence, if they can count syllables in a word, can they actually hear different sounds and repeat those sounds. Barton recommends that students have an IQ of 70 or higher to use the system, and this is for a population that already can speak English. So it's not a tool for English language learners. So what we do is when students apply for our services, we give them the CASAS exam. And if they place in those 2 lowest levels of CASAS, the beginning literacy or beginning basic skills, we will put them through this screening. And generally they pass the screening and we can begin them on Barton. There have been a couple of students who do not pass the screening, and we don't turn them away. What we do is we spend some time working with them kind of on very basic, like preschool, kindergarten type skills, helping them to understand what rhyming is all about, We help them understand what a syllable is so that they can hear a syllable in a word. Very often they need help with the alphabet, so we'll work on that. And we will do some easy phonemic awareness type skills. Can they hear the first sound in a word? Can they hear the ending sound in a word or the medial sound? And if you're looking for materials like that, what we have found is the Florida Center for Reading Research has a great resource site that has a lot of activities that you can download, games that you can download for these kinds of very basic activities. And that's what we use with our students. Once they have a handle on these things, then we go ahead and start them on Barton Level 1. So I wanted to share with you an example of a student who's at that very low level of Barton and doing an in-person lesson, so you can see what that looks like.
So this time after you break a word, I'm going to change the sound. Then we'll do a new step. Okay, the first word is fim.
Fim.
Okay, say it again slowly.
Fim.
F,
Fim.
I,
It. M.
Please do it again.
Fit. M.
I,
It.
M.
M.
Fim.
Fim.
Okay, so now I'm going to change the vowel sound from to eh. Fan. Fi,
Fan.
fi,
Fan.
eh,
M.
mm. Fan.
Fan.
Do it again, please.
So you can see that's using a nonsense word, and those tiles didn't even have letters on them yet. That's because the tutor is just really working on those auditory skills with that student to help them understand how to manipulate sounds. When you replace a medial sound, how does that change the word? How can he repeat a series of sounds? And all of that is a good grounding before the tutor would move into using letter tiles and then connecting those sounds that he's learned to the letter that represents it. Okay, so what I wanted to do now was stop sharing my screen and show you Barton live as it's used in the online platform, which is called Wizimo. And I wanted to do a little brief lesson, and I'm wondering if there's somebody here who would volunteer to be my student. Is there anybody? This is not difficult. This is basic phonics.
I will.
Okay, who
Anne.
said that? Anne?
Yeah.
Okay, Anne, are you on a computer, not like your phone?
Yeah, I'm on a computer.
Okay, I'm going to give you remote control. So I just gave you remote control because I'm going to ask you to move some things around on my screen in just a minute. And you can use your cursor to point to things and we'll be able to see that as well.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a lesson from level 3 of Barton. By this point, after level 1 and level 2, a student has learned consonant sounds, the student has learned vowel sounds, and they have learned about digraphs. Those are two words that together make one sound, like CH says ch. And now in level 3, the student is going to begin to work with blends. That's where you have two consonants together, but they each make their own sound. So at this lesson, we're going to start by reviewing some things that we have already learned. So we have talked, Anne, about vowels. Can you tell me which of these tiles on the screen are vowels?
The yellow tiles, A, E, I, O, U.
That's right. And would you point to each one and tell me its sound?
A, I, A.
Excellent. You did that great. I'm going to pull down one of these tiles because in our last lesson, we learned about two letters on one tile are put there because they make one sound. Two letters that make just one sound are called a digraph. Do you see some other digraphs on our screen?
SH.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And what sound does that make?
Sh.
Excellent. Do you see any others?
TH.
And what sound does that make? Okay, excellent. So now I'm going to wash those tiles away and I'm going to say a nonsense word. Are you ready?
Ready.
Chup. Can you repeat that?
Chop.
Okay, what is the first sound you hear in that word?
Ch.
Good. Could you pull down the tile that makes that sound? Good. So after I practiced hearing the initial digraph sound with Anne with a few more words, I would switch that up and say, Anne, now I want you to listen for the ending sound in a word. If I'm going to give you another nonsense word, it's lish.
Lish.
What's the last sound you hear?
Sh.
Great. What tile makes that sound?
SH.
Great. And then we would practice the ending sounds a little bit more with some more nonsense words. And then I'm going to switch things up and say, I want you to listen to the middle sounds that you hear. These are the vowels. Here's another nonsense word, cham. Can you repeat that?
Cham.
And what's the middle sound you hear?
A.
Good. What vowel makes that sound?
A.
You got it. Okay. And so we would go ahead and practice that some more too. Now I'm going to pull down a word. And I'm going to click on each tile and say its sound. L, a, sh. Can you repeat that?
L, a, sh.
Great. Now we're going to say this word fast, like a word, lash.
Lash.
How many sounds do you hear in that word?
Lash. 3.
Excellent. How many letters are there?
4.
4. So why are there more letters than sounds?
Because the end sound sh is made of 2 letters.
And what do we call that term when we have 2 letters that make one sound?
A digraph.
Very good. But sometimes we have 4 letters and they make 4 separate sounds. Let's take a look at that. I'm going to pull down 2 different letters and we would go through the same process, saying each sound separately. L, a, s, t. Could you do that?
L, a, s, t.
Is there a digraph in that word?
No.
Good. You're right. There's something new. We are seeing 2 consonants next to each other, the S and the T. And when they make their own sounds, we call that a blend. And in this lesson, we're going to be learning about blends at the end of words. So I'm going to put the A back and I'm going to pull down the I. What is this word now?
List. List.
Very good. And where is the blend?
The end, the st.
Very good, the S and the T. So we would go ahead and practice this several more times. Then I'm going to trash the tiles and I'm going to ask Anne now, after I have modeled this and we practiced it together, to try to build a word on her own with the tiles. So your word is must. Can you repeat that word?
Must.
Okay, say it very slowly with each sound. Okay. And we're going to use our fingers too to hear the sounds. So we're going to use our non-writing hand and we're going to use a finger for each sound. So good. Now pull down a tile that you think represents each one of those sounds to spell the word. Very good. Now, go. There you go. Can you say it fast like a word?
Must.
Okay, so double check it. Put your cursor under each word and say it more slowly. Is that the word you wanted?
Must. Yeah, that's what you
Yeah,
said.
it is.
Okay.
Okay. Could you change this word to make it say mist?
Mist.
Very good. Okay, so Ann and I would continue making up other words while she's manipulating these tiles on the screen. And we would progress in our lesson to reviewing some sight words. We would have more practice with blends, words that have blends. It eventually would lead to being able to read sentences. And here are some sentences that would have blends at the ends of words, so students can see how these words form together. They should be able to read these sentences. And after they have read sentences and done some work with sentences, whoops, just a second here. I wanted to pull down. They would have the opportunity then at the end of the lesson to read a story. And it would just be, they should have no trouble reading the story because it's going to be using consonant vowel sounds they've already learned, digraphs they've already learned, and blends at the end of the word. So that is kind of an abbreviated quick lesson of Barton online. Many of our tutors also supplement this with some of the games that Barton provides. And I'm just going to show you real quick one of the rhyming games they have. This is a column game where a student can go ahead and click on words that seem to rhyme with each other, like rent, lent, and Kent, self, and shelf, and so on. So they usually supplement the basic lessons with some games. All right, so I'm going to go back to sharing my presentation. And I just wanted to share with you a closing thought from one of our students who is at a beginning level reader. He is somebody who probably does have a reading disability, although it's never been documented. And he came to Oakland Literacy Council after his wife died, because his wife had been taking care of everything that needed to be read in his house, paying his bills. But when she died, he was stuck. He needed help, and he realized he finally needed to get over this reading challenge that he had. He's also been working with his tutor for not quite a year, and here's what he has to say.
I enjoy it. It's challenging, it's good for the mind and good for me, because now I don't have to rely on others.
So he more and more is being able to become independent with his learning, because he's being able to unravel that mystery with words and basic decoding words. So at this time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if anybody has some questions for me, or as I said at the beginning, if you are somebody who has a reading specialist background, I'd love to hear kind of your comments on what I've showed you, or maybe you want to share what issues that you're having serving your reading students.
I have a question. I
Mhm.
have two questions. How long is each session with the tutor? Like how long does it typically take to complete one lesson of this?
Well, Barton recommends that you do a 1-hour session twice a week,
Okay.
or at least twice a week. And that's usually how our tutors operate. Now, it may take longer to get through a lesson. It just depends on, there's so much extra practice that is available. Susan Barton doesn't recommend a student like you go on to the next part of a lesson if they're still struggling with it. So you would do extra review.
Okay.
So and then there may be a lesson that a student, gets really quickly and you sail through. So it's hard to say each lesson takes an exact amount of time.
Okay. And then my next question was, I know that you said this was not intended for ESL learners. Is there because I teach basic ESL, like levels 1 and levels 2, and this, like the ideas behind it seem really great to teach blending. What is the reasoning for not using this with ESL students? Is it because of the you don't want to teach vocabulary, or why wouldn't this be a good tool?
That's a good question. And I don't know what her thinking is on that. I'm guessing it has to do with being able to hear and replicate sounds well, because if you have an absolute beginner ESL student, they're not going to be able to make some of those sounds because they just don't exist in their own language. And I don't know if it's ever been used for ESL. We usually, we have been using a phonics package for ESL lessons that is provided by Literacy Minnesota that you can download very inexpensively. We've just started to do that with some of our beginning ESL learners, and it does seem to take a similar approach, but it's supplemented with a lot of teaching vocabulary, teaching pronunciation work too. Thank you for being my student, by the way.
I came from the elementary world, so this is like my thing. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I think a lot of us came from the elementary world that are in this room. I had a question. What do you guys use for like independent practice? Or is there a component with that? Maybe I missed it.
There are sight word, flashcards that you can create for your students. We encourage students to keep a personal dictionary as they're learning new words through the system. There are reading sheets for extra practice, like that one that I showed you that you could send home with your student to have them review.
There's a question in the chat. What is the name of the program for level 1 ESL?
Let me look it up real quick. I think it's just phonics for ESL beginners. Let me see if I can find it real quick on our SharePoint and show it to you. It's definitely not as comprehensive as the Barton system, because the Barton system gets into all the spelling rules, and this is much quicker. While I'm looking for this, is there another question?
Do you know about the cost of Barton?
Yes, it is about $1,000 for a site license for levels 3 and up. Levels 1 and 2 are $500. Again, that is unlimited for forever.
So it's like literally just $1,500 and you never pay again.
Well, that's per level. So yes, if you wanted to get started with just the first couple levels, it's $1,000 a level. So we bought 8 levels. It was 7,000 something. We bought the wooden tiles to go with it. So the only thing that we would need to supplement is if we have more need for those wooden tiles. But like I said, we had the masters, we just create binders for the teachers, which they like because they can write in, they can give the sheets to the students to write on.
And then that includes like the online component.
That does not include the online. That is an extra fee. Generally, we don't, our grantors are happy to pay for things that help our students access tutoring remotely if they wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. So we have been able to cover that cost separately.
Do you happen to know about how much that is, like, per license?
It's $100 per tutor per year. And then there's like an initial setup fee and a level fee that you need. So it might be like $200 to get started. All right, I'm going to share my screen again and show you this phonics workbook for ESL that we adopted. You can purchase this from the Literacy Minnesota website. So it goes through basic sounds and blends. To me, there's 2 different levels to it. But what's nice about it, if you're doing remote tutoring, is the tutor can share the PDFs like I'm doing. You can print out the workbook, which is like 30 pages, and send it to a student and they can write in their copy.
Are there any other questions, comments?
All right, well, thank you very much. If this is something you explore for your organization, I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. You can reach me at Oakland Literacy Council. Our website is oaklandliteracy.com. And certainly like to see if there is another organization that adopts it, it would be really great to collaborate with on training. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Don't forget to go see our exhibitors from 10:30 until 11. And then our next session is from 11 to 12. So don't miss out on that. You should be receiving in your email the sketch form. I would do it today if I was you. That's just me. I forget things. But have a good rest of your day, guys. I'll see you around.
Thank you.
Thanks.